Robert, a homeless man living on Chicago's cold streets, had grown accustomed to people's stares passing him by unnoticed. But that day, when he saw a businessman clutch his chest and collapse to the ground, everything would change. Because Robert's hands had actually saved thousands of lives, creating miracles in operating rooms for 30 years. Welcome to Stories of Black Lives. Before we begin these powerful stories about respect, justice, and hope, please let us know in the comments which country you're watching from and your age. If you want to see more stories like this, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like our video. The cold November wind was blowing mercilessly on Michigan Avenue. On Chicago's world-famous shopping street, people wrapped in thick coats, hands buried in their pockets, were hurrying along, trying to take shelter in warm cafes, glittering stores, and heated office buildings. The sky was covered with lead-gray clouds, the sun was nowhere to be seen, and the air was filled with that cold November atmosphere. The thermometer showed 5 degrees below zero, and the icy wind stung people's faces. It was exactly 2:30 p.m., and the city's heart continued beating at its normal pace, millions of lives flowing on. Dr. Robert Eugene Washington, sitting on the old metal bench right at the edge of Lincoln Park, was watching the people passing quickly in front of him silently, patiently, and with deep melancholy. The 58-year-old Robert's face clearly showed the deep traces of time, pain, disappointments, and hardships he had endured. His brown eyes, once filled with sparkling intelligence and determination, were now dim with fatigue and resignation. His gray beard was messy and unkempt, his hair disheveled and long. The worn navy coat he wore was full of patched pieces, faded in color with torn sleeves. He had hole-ridden sneakers on his feet, soles worn out, laces broken, and the old backpack beside him looked as world weary as he was. When people looked at Robert, they only saw one of the countless homeless people on Chicago's streets. Some looked with pity, some turned their heads away uncomfortably, most didn't see him at all. But Robert's hands, those hands told a completely different story. These hands had created real miracles in the operating room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital for a full 25 years. Robert, who graduated summa cum laude from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, had specialized in cardiovascular surgery, performed thousands of heart surgeries throughout his career, saved countless lives, and became one of America's most respected heart surgeons. But those brilliant days were now far behind. In Robert's mind, those days still came alive vividly. The moments when he stood in the operating room in his green scrubs, those critical minutes when his hands touched delicate heart tissues, the happy moments when he gave families the good news that the surgery was successful. Every morning he would wake up at 5:30, go to the hospital, sometimes performing 3 to 4 surgeries a day. His colleagues called him Golden Hands because 98% of the patients who went through his hands recovered. Robert wasn't just a doctor, he was a miracle worker who gave hope to his patients. The early years of his marriage to Elena were perfect. Elena was a professor of English literature at the University of Chicago, intelligent, beautiful, and a wonderful woman who supported Robert's career. Together they took European vacations, listened to opera, enjoyed fine dinners, and made future plans. With Robert's doctor's salary and Elena's academic income, they lived comfortably. They had a beautiful house in Lincoln Park, a BMW in the garage, and a summer cottage. 5 years ago, Robert's entire world, everything he knew, every value he believed in was turned upside down. His beloved wife Elena, in the most beautiful period of their 20-year marriage, had been diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. The initial findings were promising. Doctors said, early diagnosis, high chance of treatment. But the cancer was very aggressive and began spreading rapidly. Robert had done everything possible to save her. Hospital expenses reached astronomical proportions. They spent crazy amounts of money on experimental treatments, desperately searching for miraculous solutions, traveling as far as Europe and even Japan. During Elena's treatment, Robert began neglecting his work. He constantly wanted to be by Elena's side, canceling surgeries, unable to focus on his patients. Hospital administration began giving warnings, but Robert didn't care. Nothing in the world was more important than his wife. He spent all their savings on Elena's treatment. He mortgaged their house, sold his car, took loans, maxed out credit cards. He sacrificed everything to save Elena. But Elena's condition continued to deteriorate. Chemotherapy made her hair fall out. Radiation damaged her skin. Her immune system collapsed. Robert couldn't bear to see his wife suffer. He couldn't sleep at night, couldn't concentrate during the day. His hands began to tremble. He turned to alcohol, first just at night, then throughout the day. Elena lost her life in Robert's arms after an 18-month struggle. Robert's world collapsed. After Elena's death, Robert completely broke down. He couldn't go to the hospital, couldn't perform surgery, couldn't talk to patients. He fell into severe depression and became an alcoholic. His debts multiplied. He lost his house. His car was repossessed. His bank accounts were blocked. Colleagues tried to help, but Robert wouldn't let anyone near him. He blamed himself, thinking, "I'm a doctor who couldn't save his wife." Robert's professional performance also began to decline. He had problems with trembling hands, lack of concentration, and inability to empathize with patients. One day, he lost a patient during surgery, and this became his last operation. Hospital management fired him. The medical board confiscated his license. His brilliant 25-year career suddenly ended. Friends and colleagues distanced themselves. His social circle scattered, and Robert found himself on Chicago's merciless streets. He was no longer Dr. Robert Eugene Washington. The neighborhood knew him only as Crazy Robert. Sometimes he talked to himself. Sometimes he mumbled Elena's name. Sometimes he recounted surgeries he used to perform. People thought he had gone crazy, but Robert was just crushed under the weight of the past. That November afternoon, while Robert sat on the metal bench, daily life on Michigan Avenue flowed at its normal pace. Yellow taxi drivers impatiently honked their horns. Parents walked quickly, holding their children tightly, trying to protect them from the cold. Young professionals rushed to their jobs, listening to music on headphones or talking on phones. Luxury cars' exhaust fumes created vapor clouds in the air. The city's noise never stopped. Robert saw everything, noticed every detail, but no human being saw him. He had become so accustomed to being invisible that he now considered this situation normal. Eleanor, the elderly woman sitting to his right, fed the pigeons in the park every day at the same time. Eleanor knew Robert, and they occasionally talked. "How are you today, Robert?" she had asked that morning. "I'm fine, Eleanor. Thank you," Robert had said. Eleanor didn't believe that Robert used to be a doctor. She thought he was fantasizing, but she was kind. To his left was a trash can where people sometimes left food. Robert also sometimes took food from there, but today he didn't have much appetite. He was tired from staying at the shelter last night because it was very noisy and he couldn't sleep. Park security guard Jimmy liked Robert because he never caused trouble. Other homeless people sometimes fought, shouted, or got drunk, but Robert was always calm. Jimmy occasionally brought him hot coffee. That day, too, he had asked, "Want some coffee, Robert?" But Robert had said, "Thanks, Jimmy, not right now." At exactly 2:45 p.m., a well-dressed, successful-looking man in his 45s passed about 20 meters in front of Robert. Marcus Theodore Blackstone was an experienced and successful investment advisor working at Steinberg & Associates, one of the largest investment firms on LaSalle Street. His black overcoat was perfectly pressed, his shiny leather shoes polished, his expensive Italian leather briefcase gleaming, the Rolex watch on his wrist sparkling. He looked like the perfect Chicago businessman and was talking to an important client on the phone while walking hurriedly. Marcus was having a very stressful day. He had back-to-back meetings since morning, was managing a large portfolio transfer, and his client Johnson was very meticulous. The Johnson family was one of Chicago's wealthiest families and had invested $50 million with Marcus's firm. This was a huge responsibility, and Marcus had to perform perfectly. "Yes, Mr. Johnson, I'm pleased to report that we've increased your portfolio by exactly 18% this quarter," Marcus was saying on the phone, his voice confident and professional. "Our investment in technology stocks performed even better than expected. Especially our positions in Apple and Microsoft stocks were very profitable. Our risky investment in Tesla also paid off. Next week you can come to my office. We'll review our new quarter strategy and evaluate future opportunities. In these market conditions, we need to diversify your portfolio and move toward hedge funds." Suddenly Marcus's words were sharply cut off. The phone slipped from his hand, and fell onto the icy pavement, its screen cracking. Marcus began clutching the left side of his chest tightly, as if someone inside was squeezing his heart. His face suddenly turned chalk white. He began having terrible difficulty breathing. Ice-cold sweat drops started flowing from his forehead and body. His eyes widened with fear, his legs trembled, and after a few staggering steps, he collapsed onto the hard pavement. "God, help!" screamed a woman passing by. This man fainted. Dozens of people passing by suddenly stopped and looked in shock. A rapidly growing crowd formed. About 15 to 20 people gathered. Some panicked and took out their cell phones trying to call 911. Some gathered around him helplessly not knowing what to do. Others backed away in fear. But none could provide professional medical intervention. None knew what they were dealing with. "Is there a doctor here?" shouted an elderly man. "We called an ambulance," said a young woman. "What do we do now?" asked someone else. People looked at each other helplessly. Marcus was writhing on the ground, trying to breathe, but no one knew how to help. Robert jumped up from the bench. The doctor instincts he hadn't used for years, but had never completely lost, immediately kicked in. Muscle memory came alive. The medical knowledge in his mind instantly organized, as if he had returned to 5 years ago. He determinedly pushed through the crowd and ran to Marcus's side. "Step back. Make way. I'm a doctor," Robert shouted loudly and authoritatively, his voice heard above the noise of Michigan Avenue. The people around him looked with amazement and disbelief. Could this dirty, disheveled, homeless-looking man be a doctor? His hair was messy, bearded, wearing a patched coat. Was this real? But the authority in Robert's voice, the determination in his body language, and his suddenly changed posture convinced them. Besides, they had no other choice. People made way for him. Robert knelt beside Marcus and immediately began professional medical protocol. First, he checked the pulse from the wrist, weak, irregular, and fast. 110 beats per second, arrhythmic. Then he checked the pulse from the carotid artery in the neck. Breathing was shallow and difficult, 28 breaths per minute. He checked the pupils of his eyes, tested their reaction to light, assessed his consciousness level. He was showing all the signs of classic acute myocardial infarction. ST elevation heart attack. Who called the ambulance? Robert called out to the crowd. "Did you call 911? Hurry. We called. They're coming," someone answered. "And can someone find aspirin? Quick. I need 325 milligrams aspirin." A middle-aged woman from the crowd took aspirin out of her purse and handed it to Robert. "Will this work?" Robert read the label. "Perfect." He quickly put the aspirin tablet in Marcus's mouth and made him chew it. "Chew this, swallow it. It will help you get better. Stay calm, buddy," Robert said to Marcus, his voice containing both professional calm and human warmth. "You're having a heart attack, but I'm here. We're going to save you. My name is Dr. Washington. What's your name?" "Marcus." The patient whispered weakly, his eyes filled with fear. "Okay, Marcus, you're my patient now, and I'm going to keep you safe. How old are you?" 45. "Have you had heart problems before?" "No, this is the first time." "Is there heart disease in your family?" "My father died of a heart attack." "I understand. Do you smoke?" "I quit 2 years ago." Robert put his ear to Marcus's chest and listened to his heart sounds. S1 and S2 sounds were heard weakly. There was an S3 gallop, a sign of left ventricular dysfunction. Then he checked his pulse again and evaluated his breathing. His hands moved with that old agility and precision, saving lives again after years. "How's the pain in your chest? Can you rate it from 1 to 10? 8, maybe 9. Very bad. Is it radiating to your left arm?" "Yes, and to my jaw." "Do you have nausea?" "Yes, very bad." The crowd around them had now reached 40 to 50 people. People couldn't understand how this homeless man was acting so professionally, how he had so much medical knowledge, how he was asking such systematic questions. "Are you really a doctor?" asked a young man from the spectators, his voice filled with amazement. Robert hesitated, lost in thought about his past for a moment. He hadn't introduced himself as a doctor for a long time. Did he still have the right to this identity? "I used to be," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off Marcus. "Now I'm just trying to help." "Which hospital did you work at?" asked a middle-aged woman from the crowd. "Northwestern Memorial Hospital," Robert said, with a fragment of his old pride in his voice. "I'm a specialist in cardiovascular surgery for 25 years, specialist." His voice trembled as he repeated the word. Northwestern, came a surprised voice from the crowd. That's a very famous hospital. Excited whispers spread among the people who heard these words. Northwestern Memorial Hospital was one of Chicago's most prestigious and respected hospitals. If this man had really worked there, maybe he really was a famous doctor. What years did you work there? Asked someone else. From 1989 to 2019. 30 years. Wow, that long. Ambulance sirens could be heard in the distance. Robert continued to stabilize Marcus's condition, constantly checking his pulse, monitoring his breathing, and tracking his vital signs for heart rhythm. He turned Marcus's head to the side, making sure his airway was open. Marcus, stay with me. Keep your eyes open. Tell me about your family. Are you married? Yes, my wife Lisa. I have children. How many children do you have? 2. Jake is 12, Emma is 8. Beautiful. Think about them now. You're going to return to them. I was married once too. Now, my wife died. From cancer. That's why I ended up in this situation. The crowd was even more affected when they heard this dialogue. It was understood that there was a great tragedy in this homeless man's past. The ambulance finally arrived and experienced paramedics rushed to the scene. 2 paramedics, Sarah Chun and Tom Rodriguez, were professional emergency medical technicians with 15 years of experience. Robert summarized the situation in professional medical terminology. 45-year-old male patient, acute ST elevation myocardial infarction. Gave 325 milligrams aspirin, pulse 110, irregular, hypotensive. Consciousness clear, but anxious. Symptoms started about 12 minutes ago. Family history positive for heart disease. Sarah was surprised when she heard Robert's terminology and professional report. Did you receive medical training? Cardiovascular surgeon, Robert said simply, but his voice carried the weight of the expertise he once possessed. While Tom prepared the EKG device, Sarah established for access. Which hospital do you work at? I don't work anymore. I'm retired. Robert was lying, but they didn't have time to explain the truth. Sarah and her team professionally placed Marcus on the stretcher, attached an oxygen mask, connected 4 fluids, and attached the EKG. ST elevation was clearly visible on the monitor. Definitely STEMI, said Tom. We need to take him to the cath lab. Will you come to the hospital? Sarah asked Robert. You started this case. You might want to see how it continues. Also, you might need to talk to the doctors. Robert hesitated. It had been exactly 5 years since he had set foot in a hospital. That environment, those smells, those memories. I don't know. Please come, Marcus said weakly, lying on the stretcher, his eyes focused on Robert. You saved me. You saved my life. I don't even know your full name. Robert, he said quietly. Dr. Robert Eugene Washington. On the way to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in the ambulance, Sarah talked with Robert. The EKG results were bad. Marcus needed emergency catheterization. What year did you graduate? Sarah asked. 1989, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. I did my residency at Northwestern, then fellowship in cardiovascular surgery. I have board certification. Sarah blinked. 1989? Wow. I might have heard of you when I was a medical student in 1995. Washington. Dr. Eugene Washington? That famous heart surgeon. Robert nodded. It felt both strange and painful to claim this identity now. Oh my God, Sarah said, her voice filled with excitement. You're really that famous Dr. Washington. When I was a student, I watched the complex surgeries you performed. You had pioneering work in mitral valve repairs. You revolutionized aortic aneurysm surgeries. What happened to you? Where had you disappeared? Robert looked out the ambulance window, gazing at the Chicago landscape. Life happened, he said simply. But you were a very famous doctor. You appeared on TV programs. You had written a book. Yes, my book, Voice of the Heart, was a bestseller. I read that book. It was very impressive. When they arrived at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Marcus was taken to the emergency room and Robert got out of the ambulance. But he couldn't bring himself to enter the hospital. Old fears, past traumas, feelings of failure came back. He stood at the hospital entrance and hesitated. He had worked in this building for 25 years, gotten married here, become famous here. His life had changed here. Dr. Patricia Henderson, emergency department director and emergency medicine specialist with 20 years of experience, saw Robert's name when reading the ambulance report. Robert Washington? This name sounds very familiar. Sarah excitedly explained. That's the famous Dr. Eugene Washington. He stabilized the patient. He was incredibly professional. An old master. Patricia looked at the door in surprise and saw Robert waiting outside. She immediately went outside and approached him. Dr. Washington? Patricia said in a respectful voice. I'm Dr. Henderson, Emergency Department Director. It's a great honor to meet you. Robert was surprised. Could someone still recognize him? Do you really know me? Of course I know you. When I was a second-year resident, I watched your surgeries. You were one of my idols. I remember that complex aortic aneurysm case, an 8-hour surgery. The patient had a 5% chance, but you saved him. Where have you been all these years? Robert looked away, with shame and pain. After I got lost. I couldn't find myself. Would you please come inside? Your patient is stable thanks to you. Marcus Theodore Blackstone is now in the catheterization laboratory, and we need to talk. Robert hesitated. I'm no longer a doctor. I lost my license. You can never stop being a doctor. Patricia said gently but firmly. This isn't just a profession, not just an identity. This is a calling. And you proved that today. You saved that man's life. Walking inside the hospital, Robert smelled the old corridor scents. Antiseptic, cleaning products, and that familiar hospital atmosphere. Every corner held a memory. This place was once his home, the center of his life, the foundation of his identity. The nurses didn't recognize him because 5 years had passed and his appearance had completely changed. Dr. Washington, someone called out. Elderly nurse Margaret O'Brien came running over. Is it really you? Margaret. Robert was surprised. Margaret had worked at this hospital for 30 years. Where have you been? We all wondered about you. We heard you had retired. But it's a long story, Margaret. Marcus's catheterization procedure was ongoing. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, the patient's attending cardiologist, couldn't believe it when he saw Robert. Robert, God, is that you? We haven't seen you for 5 years. Hello, Sam. Did you bring this patient? Sarah the paramedic told me. Incredible. You're still saving lives. Patricia took Robert to a separate consultation room to talk. Robert, what happened to you? Why did you leave the hospital after such a successful career? Why didn't you ever contact us? Robert told his long and painful story in detail. His wife's battle with cancer, her death, his financial collapse, depression, alcohol problem, and professional difficulties. Patricia listened carefully without judgment. I lost my license, Robert said, his voice broken. I can no longer perform surgery, can't work with patients. My malpractice insurance was canceled. But your knowledge is still in your head, Patricia said, pointing to her head. Your experience is still in your bones, and your hands can still save lives. We all saw that today. Marcus is alive because you were there. I don't know what I should do anymore. Is it too late? Patricia thought. We have a social services coordinator here, Jennifer Martinez. She can help you. We can solve your housing problem. And if you really want, we can start the bureaucratic process to help you get your license back. It won't be easy, but it's not impossible. Robert was surprised. Really? But I'm all ready. I'm also getting older. I'm 58 years old. You're still considered young in the medical world. You're still Dr. Robert Washington. You just need help. That night Robert stayed in the hospital guest room. Patricia arranged for him to stay in a clean and safe temporary shelter that the security chief knew. For the first time in 5 years, he slept in a real bed. The next morning, Robert visited Marcus in the ICU. The businessman was recovering rapidly. The catheterization had been successful, the blocked artery was opened, and a stent was placed. Robert, Marcus said seriously, be honest with me. Were you really a famous doctor? Robert nodded. I used to be, yes. A long time ago. The doctors told me. You were one of Northwestern's most famous heart surgeons. You performed thousands of surgeries. Yes, for 1,247 surgeries. What exactly happened? Can you tell me? Robert told his story in detail. Marcus listened carefully without judgment. His wife's death, financial collapse, depression, alcohol problem. My firm makes major investments in the healthcare sector, Marcus said. Steinberg and Associates. We invest in private hospitals, medical research, pharmaceutical companies. And I owe you my life. This is a debt, and I plan to repay this debt. You don't owe me anything, Marcus. Being a doctor is like that. You help. No, Robert. You saved my life. You saved Jake and Emma's father. You saved Lisa's husband. I can't forget this. A few days later, Marcus was discharged. But his relationship with Robert continued. Marcus hired Williams and Associates, one of Chicago's best law firms, to resolve Robert's legal situation. Lawyer Michael Thompson started the license restoration process. Dr. Henderson also kept her word. She organized a comprehensive rehabilitation program for Robert, found a small but clean apartment near Lincoln Park, and provided safe housing. She offered a part-time consulting position at the hospital. Social services specialist Jennifer Martinez began handling Robert's Social Security, health insurance, and other bureaucratic matters. After 5 years, Robert was being included in the system again. "You know," Jennifer said, "I was very moved by your story. Homelessness isn't just a financial problem. Sometimes life's cruel blows knock people down." Robert didn't want to leave the help he received unreturned. He started working as a volunteer at the hospital. He was helping doctors in the emergency room, talking to patients, sharing his experience. "This isn't charity work. This is sharing experience," he would say. 6 months later, after a long legal process and passing psychiatric evaluations, Robert got his medical license back. The Illinois Medical Board had evaluated Robert's rehabilitation process and restored his license. "Don't waste this second chance," the board chairman Dr. Adams had said. Hospital management offered Robert first a part-time, then a full-time position. But Robert didn't want to return directly to the operating room. He wanted to test himself by working in the emergency room first. A year later, Dr. Robert Eugene Washington was performing surgery again in the cardiovascular surgery department at Northwestern Memorial. His first surgery was a simple coronary bypass, but his hands had never forgotten. Muscle memory was perfect. "It's like you never left," assistant Dr. Kim had said. Marcus and Robert became close friends. Marcus's firm, Steinberg and Associates, donated $5 million to the hospital where Robert worked. The Robert Washington Cardiovascular Research Center was established. "What if you hadn't seen me on the street that day?" Marcus asked one day. "But I did see you," Robert said with a smile. And that's enough. Sometimes second chances come in the most unexpected ways. Robert's story became a headline in the Chicago Tribune. From homeless man to heart surgeon, the power of second chances. He appeared on CNN, ABC News, 60 Minutes. His story inspired America. But Robert didn't want to appear too much in the media. "I'm just doing my job," he would say. His colleagues at the hospital respected Robert. Everyone knew how difficult it was for him to come back after the hardships he had experienced. "You're our hero," Nurse Margaret had said. 2 years later, Robert opened a free health clinic for the homeless. Its name, Second Chance Clinic. With Marcus's financial support, he rented a building near Old Michigan Avenue. The clinic was open 3 days a week and provided free health services to the homeless. Robert worked there as a volunteer and invited other doctors too. "These people need not only care but also respect," Robert would say to volunteers. Eleanor, the elderly woman who fed pigeons in the park, didn't recognize Robert when she came to the clinic. "Doctor, have I seen you before?" "Yes, Eleanor. I'm Robert who used to sit on the bench in the park." Eleanor's mouth fell open. "Are you that Robert?" "Crazy Robert." "Not anymore," Robert said with a smile. Park security guard Jimmy also benefited from the clinic. "I never would have thought you were a real doctor," he said. 3 years later, Robert established the Elena Washington Cancer Research Foundation in memory of Elena. The foundation provided financial support to families of cancer patients. "Elena would be proud of this," Robert said at the opening. Robert no longer sits on the bench on Michigan Avenue, but he occasionally goes there and remembers that day. Those moments sitting on that metal bench, the times when people ignored him, the minute when Marcus collapsed. "This bench changed my life," he would tell visitors. Now 61 years old, Robert is still performing surgery, giving hope to his patients, and showing people that second chances exist. Marcus and his family became close friends with Robert. Jake and Emma call Robert Dr. Bob. "Dad's lifesaver," Emma says. Robert's story began to be taught as a case study in medical schools. It's taught in resilience in medicine classes. "Sometimes the brightest days come after the darkest periods," Robert tells students. Every morning when coming to the hospital, Robert passes by that park and feels a sense of gratitude inside. During those days sitting on that bench, he never thought these things would be possible. "Never give up," he tells his patients. "I lived homeless for 5 years, but I still came back. You can come back too." In Robert's office hangs Elena's photo. Before every surgery, He looks at her and says, "This is for you." Today, Robert is recognized as one of Chicago's most respected heart surgeons. But he never forgets that powerful moment. The moment when a man had a heart attack on Michigan Avenue, and he remembered that he was Dr. Robert Eugene Washington. This story shows us that a person never completely loses their value. Sometimes they just need to be remembered. Second chances are real and can come at the most unexpected moments. Even though Robert's hands didn't perform surgery for 5 years, they never forgot how to save lives. And most importantly, this story teaches us this. A person's outward appearance, their current situation, temporary difficulties in their life do not show their true value and potential. Robert was still a doctor when he was homeless. He could still save lives while sitting in the park. Now Robert gives hope to new patients every day and tells everyone, "It's never too late. I started over at 58. You can start too."